Welcome, guys, to the Builder podcast. I'm really happy to launch this podcast with you. That's going to be the first episode that we're going to do today together. We call that the Builder podcast to make sure we are really creative and straightforward. So I'm really happy to have you here. We are currently in Brussels for ETHcc event. ETHcc is one of the biggest European crypto conference and Web3 conference in Europe, and we created this beautiful studio to have you guys today and discover a little bit more about your story, your adventure, what you are building right now on Flow, what should we get excited and all of that, and love to have a little bit of intro from you before we start this amazing deep dive.
I'm Patrick, one of the co-founders of More Markets. More Markets is an under-collateralized lending protocol that we're going to be launching on Flow Crescendo mainnet as soon as it's live, so hopefully August. Sharon?
Yeah, I'm Sharon. I'm also co-founder at More Markets. I've been working in tech since I was 12. Really excited to be a part of Flow Crescendo. So yeah, looking forward to that.
That's really nice to have you, and I think there's just the perfect timing to join right now, like the network. We have so much things going on. To give you a little bit of background also regarding what is Flow for the new people joining us, and then also potentially discovering Flow right now. So Flow Foundation is the foundation behind Flow Blockchain. Flow Blockchain has been launched, originally there was a project that's been created by the guys that was behind CryptoKitties back then in 2017. So they launched like CryptoKitties. That was kind of like the first proof of concept for kind of like consumer app and NFTs. They actually created the creator, the chief architect officer of Flow, created the ERC 721 format and coined the name NFT back then. And then they launched this amazing app, CryptoKitties. That was like the first time you could like actually own something internet. Also, at the same time, of course, the whole CryptoPunks, of course, and all this launch. But there was like this new standard was like that was the big launch on Ethereum. We back then they actually broke the Ethereum network. They were like they represented I think like 30% of the gas at that time. So the whole network was like overload. And so based on that, they were like, okay, we want to push like the people internet. We want to push like the consumer readiness of this kind of product being like pushing digital sovereignty for the people. And so they decided to move from, okay, that's all the limitation we faced when we launched on Ethereum back then. So they created their own programming language to have like something that is a bit more intuitive than Solidity. So this programming language is called Cadence. The idea is like to make the on-chain logic way more easier to build, and also to have like way more like protocol features directly in the accessible in the language to create like cool user experience. And so they created the language, and they created the blockchain, the layer 1 blockchain, and with like a different like design fundamental in order like to make it like faster, more secure, and also like just feeding the consumer aspect of this product to make sure that we can do at scale. And then after that, they actually launched NBA Top Shot, NFL All Day on this blockchain. We spent like a couple years doing a lot of research and development, using like this product, NBA Top Shot, NFL All Day, Disney Pinnacle, to make sure that we can create as much as like amazing user experience feature at the protocol level that fitted leveraging this experience with this product. And now we are really happy to finally release all those features with Crescendo, our next big upgrade, to make it accessible on the EVM zone directly on our network that is fully equivalent. And that's how right now I think you are able like to launch More Markets on Flow. So just like shipping like Solidity code with zero code changes directly on the network, and also leveraging your product in a more consumer way with Cadence on the other side to make it more user experience oriented and consumer ready. Sorry for the long monologue. I'm selling a bit. I'm just trying to give like the big context for the audience to make sure they understand like what's happening here, and that we're not just around like beautiful vegetables.
That's cool.
So that's the context. But that's the full foundation context, and I would love to have a bit more of your background also. So we understand a little bit what is more markets, but I would love to understand like how you got there, how you got in Web3. What's your experience before more markets?
Go ahead, Sean.
So for me, I got into Web3 because peer-to-peer technology was always interesting. I always thought with various concepts like torrents, etc. Even though the legalities of all of that is questionable, the fact that you could build something where everybody could participate, it's shared, there is some level of transparency that was cool. So for me, Web3 was interesting, but initially a lot of it was about money games. But I was more interested in like the underlying decentralized technology and then looking at how to leverage that. And so after Ethereum launched and several other networks came into play, examples like CryptoKitties, you could really see a world of how this technology could be utilized. And so before I got into Flow and before I got into Web3, I started as a programmer, then I worked as CTO. I started an education company out of Sri Lanka, which is now the largest corporate education company there. And I've just always been really interested in like new technology and just what unlocks those bring. And so for me, Web3 was a really interesting use case in terms of building cool new primitives that lots of people could use. And that also kind of ties into the mainstream narrative. And so, yeah, that's basically my story and how I got into
that is super. That is really, really interesting. I love like the way you're approaching it. I mean, I'm super excited also about like how it's like right now the best time to contribute to standards. And like a lot of people are going to build on top of it. And I think like we are sometimes losing about where the North Star in Web3 about like how we can create like more interoperability, because like Web3 is all about, we are aiming at decentralization, we are interoperability too. And so it's like how we can build the standard that create like the ability to anyone to build on top of it. And right now with more markets, you're building the standard on Flow of lending protocol and also with like this main focus of under-collateralized lendings. And I mean I'm super excited each time to see this kind of approach of like, okay, let's build a protocol that can be the new standard for that. And then let's build a couple of products potentially on top of this protocol, but anyone can leverage that in the future. And that's why I think it's super excited to right now build on all this technology. So yeah, I just really liked what you just said. And what about you? Like, what's your background? How did you join the whole revolution, Web3 revolution?
I guess my journey here started in 2011 or 2012. A couple of friends were really interested in Bitcoin, and they got me interested in Bitcoin back then. Wow. So we would, well, kind of. Honestly, back then I didn't really like believe in it that much. I was like, what is this digital currency?
Yeah.
I studied economics in college, and so it seemed like this foreign, weird concept to me. So I wasn't particularly attracted to it. I was like, how does this match up with like the normal financial world? I didn't have the foresight to really get into it at the time. We would just use Bitcoin and pay each other in Bitcoin for pizza and stuff like that back then. And then, I didn't think about keeping my wallet secure or anything. I would like throw away my computers. There was like Bitcoin on my computers from back then. Still looking for those. And then around 2012, I started working on a distributed file system with a couple of French engineers. And that was the first time I was doing product with these sorts of technologies. It wasn't anything based on the blockchain back then. But as that product matured, I thought it would be really interesting to tokenize it. It was around the time that IPFS was building out IPFS. Yeah. And I was really pushing to go in that direction. But in the end, we didn't really do anything in the crypto space with it. And then that company got sold to Docker in 2016. So I took a step back. I'm more of like a UX designer, product designer, and I was working on Web2 products basically up until I met Sharon in 2020.
Yeah.
And we kind of had the same idea about the social aspects of crypto and what it could bring to governance or communities and things like that. So we started working on reputation systems, measuring credibility in communities, and doing this across any ecosystem because we didn't really feel like these concepts had to be isolated to a blockchain or to a particular, community. And then just recently, like about 6 months ago, we kind of always had this idea of like, if that never worked out, we would do something in DeFi. Here we are doing something in DeFi now.
I mean, it's really correlated. Reputation and decentralized finance. How do you want to do? Like potentially, I mean, reputation brings trust in the space. Trust can enable so like decentralized finance somehow on some pillars. I can see already the purists saying, yelling behind the camera, but on the social network. But like, I mean, like, of course, you have like yeah, code is low, and a lot of people saying that like code is low, and I am a strong believer of that, saying that like that's how we create trust. We write it directly in the code, and then you have all the players around the table playing with the same rules and with this protocol that commits to specific rules. But at the same time, reputation is really important also regarding this network. You want to also potentially add like some the score on the score reputation on the people like playing or interacting with the protocol. That can also add like a lot of value. What was your approach regarding reputation? Or like what did you try to fix at that time?
I can take that. So reputation is interesting, right? Because when we tried to approach the problem of reputation, it was mainly to do with DAOs. And so the challenge was that if I'm a co-contributor to a DAO, I get paid using tokens, but the tokens also translate to money, and they translate to reputation when it goes into voting for, let's say, a governance proposal, right? So I have to kind of make this distinction between, do I want to convert this to money so that like I can buy food and drinks and whatever, or do I want to hold it on as reputation so that I have power to vote on a governance proposal? And so one of the things we tried to do very early on is to try and decouple these two different concepts and just think about how can someone be able to have tokens and then spend those tokens, but also keep their reputation power? And how do you build alternate systems that actually capture that value? And so one of the things that we learned very early on is also that reputation is localized. It depends on context. So as much as there have been early efforts with like the DGen score and like other wider reputation systems, we think what's interesting about reputation is that depending on context, you can apply different mechanisms and principles and like methodologies of developing various reputation systems. So for us, when it came to financial markets, what's really interesting was that over-collateralized lending already exists, and there are so many protocols like Aave, Compound, etc. that work on that. But under-collateralized lending is interesting because you need to apply some kind of a reputation metric to be able to facilitate that. And so we work with this third-party Credora that then basically rates various agencies, organizations, and they bring that data on chain. And so they take care of a lot of the rating, the debt recovery, etc., and they provide that reputation score. And so for us, utilizing that and building a lending protocol made a lot more sense than looking at like just a person's random score based on various factors. So that's kind of how we got into that.
I love to understand this. I mean, to discover this kind of story, because sometimes you understand that like that wasn't the things that you expected that unlock a whole new world. So like reputation can potentially like unlock a big unlock for on-chain credit and loans in general, and like, for example, like other projects like in the space are trying to fix like identity on chain to then like enables like many things behind and many different use cases, and so I'm a strong believer that like sometimes it's like it's not what you expected. There was like the hard work you needed like to tackle like something like way more complex and potentially in an indirect way before like tackling like the direct product. So the reputation. When I think about reputation, I'm always like, reputation online and open source and contribution in general online. I'm always amazed about like the Wikipedia model, like how they built like this, like how they create like this community of like contributor, and how you manage reputation of who's gonna have the like, XYZ rights to contribute to XYZ elements, and how you manage this whole system so that you can create like this now like one of the biggest knowledge library that we have on Earth. And I think like it's strongly related to somehow with also like financial. How do you apply this kind of logic in the financial world, and how you create like rules and trust that can enable this kind of thing. Speaking about trust and how did you meet each other? Because it's always tricky, like to find a co-founder to start a project. We know that's like one of the main big failure point is like the team, and so the co-founder just can disagree on XYZ point. And so when we see like a strong team like you with like strong like objective, I mean that's I'm always curious to ask like how do you create this synergy? How do you build that?
In 2022, I was in Lisbon for a crypto conference, and one of my friends introduced me to a blockchain ecosystem that was starting an accelerator program. And so I started doing some mentorship in there and around product and UX design. And they started setting up calls with different people that were participating in that program. Mm-hmm. And it turns out Sharon was one of these people. And so we got on a call one time, and I think we were only supposed to chat for like 20 minutes, and we ended up chatting for like an hour and a half. And we really got along well. And we both had the same sort of ideas around the social aspects of crypto and how these systems should be designed to enable people to have credibility and governance power based on that credibility. And I don't know, it just kind of like snowballed from there. Within 2 months, we started raising funds. We had a really, really amazing advisor who's still our advisor today, William Mugayar, who has been just an absolutely incredible resource. He kind of really helped orchestrate not only the creation of the project, but he really pushed us on our ideas. He put us in touch with people that were interested in financing our project. And then we hadn't met yet. And I think we met for the first time at ETH Dubai in April or May of that year. Yeah. And so that was the first time we met each other. And then we met again in Lisbon that year. And that's how we started building like this relationship. But then, I mean, this is the first time we've seen each other in 2 years. And
that's crazy. That's really crazy. So we are also like a bit of a decentralized team on our side too. I've been working with, I have like some workmates in Flow Foundation that I never met, and now we are speaking every single day. And it's crazy how you can also like build like a strong relationship. Like you can feel that also like in any kind of like NFT community or this kind of thing. Like we can see like this like just connection and community getting like stronger and stronger every day. But like just being able sometimes to be like in the same room like we are today, it's just like it's for me like it's a speed factor. Like you just like you can save a lot of time just also by feeling like a bit like the energy of other people. But that's I love the story of how like everything launched. And so you started with the reputation topic and trying to solve that problem, and then at one point you realized that like there was potentially also like an entry point, like all this experience that you had in the reputation could lead to a new product, which is more markets. Could we deep dive a little bit into more markets to understand better? Like, so for the audience, just a quick pitch is like an under-collateralized loan protocol, but it brings a lot of questions, I guess, to the audience. So it's like the value proposition is super sexy. We love it. How do you make that possible in different aspects, tech and legal?
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy question to answer. I think that in crypto, generally, over-collateralized lending was just taken as a given, as the default and the standard for how lending should work. And it kind of is, right? Like if you're trying to build a completely trustless system that's completely programmatic, then that makes a lot of sense, right? You don't want to take on too much risk, because if you're basically doing credit, then what is there behind the credit to backstop someone defaulting on their loan? And that's kind of where we were thinking it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Like if you take it from a user experience or end user perspective, I mean, the world already works on a credit system in a lot of ways. And if we want to facilitate the same level of financial maturity that exists today, we can't make it mandatory for everyone to put up collateral and only take out a loan up to 90% of their collateral or less. It just doesn't make sense from a capital efficiency perspective. And so finance, the way that finance exists today, can't use that same model. And so we had to find this way of mixing what crypto is able to do from a crypto perspective with how the traditional financial system works. And there's different ways of doing that. Obviously, like introducing this notion of under-collateralization or unsecured loans or credit, whatever anyone wants to call it, introduces a risk that you can't control programmatically.
How do you control that?
So part of it is going into the game of like taking out a loan. There needs to be some objective measure of what someone's credit capacity could be. And so Sharon mentioned Credora earlier. Credora basically asks borrowers to prove ownership of assets in different wallets and different protocols so that they have an idea of what the depth of liquidity that any borrower might have. And then the opposite side of that is like when someone defaults, what happens? There needs to be a robust recovery mechanism to be able to basically recover assets. And so we need some level of control when someone takes out a loan. And so only certain people can get these ratings and become borrowers that have access to this unsecured capital. And then obviously there's the legal system or the judicial system, or perhaps just the relationship between the borrower and the asset recovery company that would facilitate the recovery. And so, I mean, we're doing this step by step. We're not going to go full into like, how does credit work at scale, or how does asset recovery work at scale? And the way that we're going to do that is we're working with Credora on the asset recovery mechanism, making sure that borrowers are aware that if they do default, they are still, responsible for reimbursing their loans. And even though that might happen off chain, we can facilitate that so it's fluid, at least when we're launching the product, and then we're going to go from there and build it out.
So you leverage the chain to create a bigger value proposition and a bigger product benefits, and at the same time you link it with more standard process to make sure that you can make this whole product more secure and can handle the risk for the users.
Yeah, I mean, there's a giant ecosystem of how this already works, right? And so if we could tap into that ecosystem and basically create the bond between DeFi and TradFi, we think that the future of finance is not going to be, at least in the immediate future, it's not going to be 100% DeFi. It's difficult to imagine DeFi maximalism kind of winning out in the end, but there's definitely a path maybe to get there. And we think that path is using the existing mechanisms that exist in TradFi today.
Yeah, it's there. But speaking about the audience, so right now, who should go to your product and leverage it? I'm guessing you have two main institution, consumer, but how does it work in your mind?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. There are two main sorts of users that we're going to try and attract to the protocol. The first is people on Flow that have Flow. Flow is just getting into DeFi. There's not a lot of utility for Flow outside of the NFT ecosystem. And we want to bring that utility to Flow. So anyone who has Flow can put up collateral and take out a loan on the protocol. And they can take out loans in BTC, ETH, STETH, USD, USDC rather. And so we want to be able to begin stimulating the DeFi ecosystem for retail Flow users. But our partnership with Credora also opens up this institutional market. And the institutional market, we're looking at borrowers that will borrow probably around between 1 and 20 million, depending on their size. And the idea isn't that they take out loans over a long-term period, because the interest rates on those loans might be higher than it would be in other places, but they do get quick access to a lot of capital without needing to put up as much collateral. And I think the loan duration is probably going to be around 2 to 10 days. So it's short-term financing for institutional borrowers.
That's crazy. So how do you think you're going to approach all the institutional, this institutional audience?
Part of it is working with Credora. They facilitated $1.5 billion in loans already for these institutional borrowers. And most of this is done through OTC or through different protocols where it's borrower specific loans. Here we're pooling loans together through markets. And Credora is going to help us onboard a lot of their existing users onto the protocol. And then Fedora also has the intention of expanding their user base pretty significantly.
And so I think, just to add, we think this is interesting because it creates more borrow demand. And if there is a large amount of borrow demand, since interest works on a adaptive rate curve that's based on like velocity and utilization of a particular pool, that also means that as a lender, you can potentially gain a much higher APY. And so that kind of brings lenders into the market and creates a much more interesting like market dynamic for everyone.
Yeah, right. That's a marketplace. You need to have like money to lend, and you need to have also lenders on the other side. That's all. And it's also like, how do you want to manage like this? We know that when you have like a marketplace product, like that's always like a little bit of a tricky work to make sure that you have like enough money to lend, and lenders to make sure money can work at the right level. But yeah, how do you want to manage that? Like, how do you want to optimize?
Yeah, so we're working with a lot of market makers to bootstrap the protocol. So market makers will be providing some initial liquidity into the protocol. There's all of this idle flow as well that can already be deployed. So that combination, we think, will be able to bootstrap our early markets. And then there's this interest rate model that we're using that also kind of incentivizes people to lend as more borrow demand appears on the protocol. And so we're going to try and push towards a target utilization of between 80 and 90% in most markets. There's also this notion of curation. So curators can take different markets, package them together in vaults, and depositors, lenders, can allocate money to vaults, and curators then distribute money across those markets based on what the APIs are, what the risk parameters, what their expected risk for those markets is. And that's how we're going to bring it to market, basically.
That's really interesting. So as a user, I can also put money in a pool that can be used to lend money. That's not only institutional.
Yeah, that's right. So any user can come in and deposit funds
on the two sides. So you can or you can put your money as in the pools that can be that will be used for lending. And or you can just like go to the market and just lend and leverage the protocol.
Yeah, that's right. So there's a distinction between, let's say, depositing or lending funds and putting up collateral and taking out a loan. And so any user can deposit or make a loan and earn APY on that, or they can put up their own collateral and take out a loan against.
And you make it secure through Fedora and also through working with like classic recovery funds companies to make sure that to reduce the risk for user.
Plus, yeah, those two notions, but also in every market, every user has a loan to value ratio. So you put up a certain amount of capital, you're only able to take out a loan up to whatever the liquidation LTV is in that market. Yeah. And if for whatever reason you're not able to say keep up with the interest payments, or your loan to value ratio increases too significantly, then you'll get liquidated. You won't get liquidated all at once, not like all of your money disappears, but there's like a step mechanism to run liquidations to give people the opportunity to sort of recover their positions.
Speaking about consumer product, I think that's a really important. I mean, that's a really important aspect. I'm not an expert in finance, definitely, and when I interact with this kind of product and this kind of protocol, that's my main fear. It's like, okay, if I interact with this product, how are we going to deal with the liquidation, and how it can be like super intuitive for consumer, to make sure that you don't just have like a ping and then just saying you lost, you know? And so like that, I'm super curious to see like in this new like consumer era that we're going to see like in this new cycle, how like those products and your product going to be like way more like friendly for consumer with like a cool workflow that can be like, can make this experience like enjoyable and not just like a stressful airport where you just, so I'm just using, I don't know if it's like the airport, feeling is the airport image is accurate right here, but I'm always like, this feeling of just waiting for your flight, and you're always stressed for an hour.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of crypto product right now are airports. You are always like, you need to be like extra careful, try to understand like, anyway, not sure I'm going to keep that in the edit. Obviously we'll keep it, but so you can comment and but yeah, I mean, like the consumer readiness of this kind of product, I think matters a lot. And so as we spoke like before, that's kind of like how this kind of protocol can be leveraged by any kind of product. So the same logic of like dropshipping dropshipping, you will be like the supplier, and anyone can just like call your protocol and create potentially like another product with another target, with another audience. Do you explore this kind of narrative? Like, do you want to create like an API or an API, but just like a way to call the protocol to let people build on top of it? Is it part of your plan?
I think there's a distinction to be made between like the smart contracts and then the user experience. What we're doing with the smart contracts themselves is that we're trying to build a primitive that anybody can then leverage, and they can build their own applications and user experiences on top of it. We're trying to build our own user experience as well, so that makes it more intuitive for users and easy for them to handle things, or like be notified on things like liquidations. But at the same time, we think that there is also an opportunity for various teams to come in and build various other consumer products on top of these lending protocols. So that's where we think it becomes really interesting, because in order to build a really good consumer experience, you need to have the base infrastructure or the base primitives in place. And so with the lending protocol, what we are trying to do is to build one of those base primitives that other people can then come in and leverage and build on. And given the fact that Flow already has a larger consumer ecosystem, you can then play on top of that and attract people and just build on top of our smart contracts and just leverage those.
So right now it's around 25 million user accounts, something like that on Flow. And you're right, like to just like to redefine it a little bit, like not speaking about API, you're speaking about smart contract, because that's potentially the whole point of the space. You don't want to call the API, you want to call the smart contract and use it as like a component that anyone can leverage in an interoperable way. And being one of the early teams to create like those primitives, just like is really exciting, because I am really curious to see how people are going to play with it. Also, like speaking a little bit about the smart contract language that we have, like on, for example, so just to give a bit of clarity also for the audience, like you can deploy two kind of languages on Flow right now. You can be able to deploy a Solidity smart contract directly on Flow with 0 code changes, so it's like fully equivalent with the Ethereum virtual machine. But I see that as like a collaboration with Cadence also. So you want to deploy your Solidity smart contract really easily, and then you want to leverage Cadence for all the user experience video. And somehow I think like a lot of people are looking at smart contract as like kind of like a backend logic, backend component, but it can actually bring a ton of value on user experience also. And so integrating that directly into your architecture can be really interesting.
Yeah, that's something that we're exploring as well, because Cadence has a lot of native advantages in the way that it's been architected and the way that it's been thought about. It also has full visibility into the EVM zone, and things like transaction bundling, MEV resistance. All of those are features that you can leverage. And so one of the conversations that we're having is also about how can we combine these two really powerful languages together, and how do we build something that's really like unique and interesting and is better than actually just building something in either one.
I was chatting with the tech team like a couple of days ago, and they were like giving me some insight about like some cool features in Cadence, and I was kind of super curious about like so you can actually now in Cadence with Crescendo you can potentially like do what we call like a scripted transaction. So you can put like a lot of different actions, one transaction. Also, when you are dealing with like a tricky transaction and to be really secure, you can add like precondition, post-condition to make sure that like to add a bit more security, and also like and make sure that your transaction doesn't fail all the time when you need like some condition, precondition or post-condition for your transaction. I'm also curious to see how so like basically if you do like precondition, post-condition and the scripted transaction, you can also build some amazing like DeFi arbitrage directly on chain, where you can just like build a machine where you always win with this logic. So I'm curious to see like when people are going to discover that, and how they're going to leverage it on Flow. There is another interesting feature that I like in Cadence is the way you can potentially like integrate like nest like EVM transaction directly into like a Cadence transaction. So as long as you don't hit the block size, you can just nest as much transaction as you want. and so you can just like supercharge like the whole app. So I'm curious how like people are gonna just like play with it in the future, like and project and huge amazing product like yourself.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I mean, there are a lot of these technological features that one can leverage and build cool things on. And I think the other interesting aspect is also Solidity is widely accepted because a lot of the other EVM chains also work on Solidity, and so you have a lot of developers that work on Solidity today. And so what's exciting about Flow Crescendo is that you can bring in some of these developers into the Flow environment, and that can also create some natural curiosity for people to start playing with Cadence and then looking at, okay, how do these two compare? How can we integrate all of these features? And so it creates like this interesting funnel of developers coming in, and you kind of trying to create this like vibrant developer ecosystem. So I'm really excited about that because I feel like that's a cool entry step into the Flow world with EVM equivalency.
And you, I mean, like, I love what you're saying. It's also make me think like community is everything in this world, and specifically in this industry, and we should like break like most of the barrier that you have in the industry. Speaking about like how protocol can be fragmented or how like language can create barriers and stuff like that. But I see we can see already that like even with my shitty English level right now, we are trying to kill this barrier. Like that should be as easy like in every. I mean like the power of this whole industry rely on like interoperability and standards. And if we are all working like trying to conquer the world, I'm not sure that's how. So like yeah, definitely like opening the door to all like Solidity developer. And then creating synergies and creating like hacker house and building and like creating this community moment where people meet. That's what we are doing right now in Brussels. Like everyone is meeting, trying to collaborate, trying to understand who is doing what, how we can just like find like a better way to find like to evolve and like to create like a stronger product and stronger value proposition for the internet. I mean like. I'm always a strong believer of saying like it's not like if you want something to change, you really need to give like a better solution, not just like otherwise if you just give conviction, that's too much effort for the people to do that, to do the bridge. And so you just want to give like that's now you can own your assets in general on chain. Now you can have like a digital sovereignty. Now you can own like your content on the internet and not just be like, and you cannot bring more people or bring more people just with conviction. Really the solution to them to discover, build, contribute. And so super excited like to have you like on this network as like new contributors, and hopefully like that will lead like to a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to add to what you guys are saying, going to EVM equivalency, I think it doesn't necessarily outright attract new developers, but I think what does attract new developers is when you do arrive, thanks to all the effort that Flow is putting into attracting new developers, you get to discover what Cadence does, and I don't think that's necessarily visible from outside of Flow. It's only like once you arrive on Flow and you begin speaking with the Flow team and other developers in the ecosystem that you really, really understand why Flow is an incredibly powerful blockchain. And I think that this is a move in the right direction. It's almost like creating a marketing funnel, if you were going to think of it from a marketing point of view. I mean, it's difficult to have someone go from landing on a website to making a purchase without having some sort of like exploratory phase, right? And I think that the EVM equivalency Crescendo is that sort of exploratory phase. Like you get to play with things that you already know, and then, whoa, you have secure enclave support, which gives you the ability to make the user experience much more interesting. And it's at the protocol level, the blockchain level, right? And I think that that's where Flow will really, really stand out. That'll take a little bit of time to get there, but I think when people begin building on Flow or even just like porting existing protocols on Flow, that's when the real innovation will begin to kick in.
Sorry, Google.
Sorry, just to add to that, I also feel that beyond like the technology piece itself, Flow in and of itself, and even Dapper Labs with its products, there's a lot of large consumer appeal. And there are a lot of interesting things that you can do to leverage that. So even as an entrepreneur, you're always thinking about what can I build, what unique advantages are there that I can leverage so that I can build something. that can potentially grow very fast and can really like help me get to the next stage. So from that perspective, if you have people coming through the door because of this Solidity unlock, and then leveraging the technology that Cadence has to offer, but beyond that also just like working with mainstream audiences, getting your product out there, looking at how to do marketing, and just leveraging some of the advantages that Flow in and of itself offers, and some of those like USPs, I think that could be really powerful.
I totally agree with you. And like, I mean, that's the Flow team and all the builders on the foundation. It's always been about the experience and how can you create a great experience with great conviction behind. And so there were like a couple of like key moments. So they were like the first approach was like this proof of concept of like digital sovereignty with CryptoKitties. And when it's just like the entire Ethereum network, and then they work on their own tech because they needed to have like a more adapted tool to be able like to reach this experience that they have in mind, like this quality experience that they have in mind regarding the consumer. I mean, Ethereum is definitely like can be an amazing experience for different audience. I think right now, hopefully in the future, like all the techs will be just like you can use it easily, but right now it's still like a bit complex for some audience. And so they built their own tech, and then they launched like that was the second like big key moment. That was like Top Shot. Top Shot went viral in 2020, and that was just like that was the first time there were like that much people on a Web3 app, and actually like that was all about just like removing all the friction. It's like you don't want to ask like people like too many efforts before playing with the product. So you just like, okay, discover the product, put your email, or even not like just like interact with the product, and when you're ready, put your email or sign up, and just start to buy like a NFT with a credit card. And once you're ready, once the consumer is ready in his mind, also give the right perks to them. They can just like claim their account and do whatever they want with their account, their item and chain. And I think that's right now, like I'm excited to see like all those products like Top Shot doing like this kind of like embracing this next cycle where what you're gonna do with all those NFTs now, that's the question that I think that they're gonna answer in the future. So building like on-chain games on top of all those NFTs and this kind of thing, but also letting anyone building on top of Top Shot. And so the same way that like we need to reopen the market with like amazing experience. For your side, like on the consumer side, we spoke a lot about like how the product works, the institutional money and stuff, but like just interesting to have a bit of your point of view regarding consumer, what people can be able like to build on top of this protocol and just build like more consumer product using what you are building right now.
I think that there's a lot of interesting opportunities that the product will facilitate. One of the ones that we're pretty excited about is doing something that might look like a savings account where you can deposit dollars into the protocol. You're basically lending dollars. And if a lot of the borrowers are retail or institutional borrowers that are taking advantage of the 200% LTV, then the interest rates on those deposits could be potentially fairly high. So if your bank is offering you 2% a day, then our protocol might be offering you 5.5, 6, 7, maybe 8%. I mean, obviously everything will depend on market conditions, but that seems like a pretty straightforward use case for a lot of people. That's really understandable. Some other things that we could facilitate are buy now, pay later, or I think it's called Klarna, where you can pay in multiple times. And we want to make the protocol accessible to do this. So we talked about smart contract extensibility earlier, and that's a core part of how we're designing the smart contracts. But for more traditional actors, why not expose that as APIs for Web 2 consumption? And then hopefully over the long term, we begin to integrate what we're doing with existing financial apps. It could be Robinhood. If you're in Europe, it could be Revolut. And that's where we see, the whole product going over the next couple of years.
That's exciting. That's really exciting. See how you can link that to all the apps with already like millions and millions of users, and potentially like some integration in Shopify, some integration in Revolut, some integration, all this kind of crazy app. I love this kind of interoperability. That's so powerful. Okay, guys, let's what all the audience should do by what at the end of this podcast, like what they should visit your website. What's the main things they need to do to discover more about more markets?
All you got to do is go to more.markets. It's that simple, and click the button, join the beta.
Yeah.
Drop your email address there, and then we'll be in touch really soon. We'll tell you about what's going on at More, and then we'll give you some opportunities to be an early user. And hopefully that leads to some other cool stuff for you.
Being early is always good, right?
Being early is always good.
Yeah. Thank you very much, guys, and see you on another Builder podcast.
Thanks,
Quite amazing.
This is
Thanks.
really nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.